Christian parenting.
Hey, Greta, welcome to Pardon the Mess. How are you today?
I'm so good. Thanks for having me on your show.
I have heard about you for so long, and you've been on my list of people to have on. So I'm just so delighted we finally get to do it. And we are cousins. I mean, family members in the Christian Parenting Network, right?
Yes, that's right. Yes, we totally are. I love it.
Is the name of your podcast your name?
It's the Greta Eskridge podcast.
Easy to find.
Try to make it
find.
easy.
I love it. Well, we were talking before we got on that you never knew that you were going to be the porn lady. I mean, sorry.
Yes, that is true. It was not on my life plan, but here I am.
I love it. It's super important. It's one of those topics that I've gotten moms reach out to me to say, my son, I've just caught my son or my daughter. And it's really scary for parents. And so we're going to cover a lot of things really quickly today, but I want y'all to go connect with her because her book is phenomenal and her podcast goes into more depth and there's resources there. And so let's start there. It's the book, It's Time to Talk to Your Kids About Porn, that came out earlier this year. What led to that? How did you become the porn lady?
Well, it actually came from a place of deep hurt.
Mm.
I'm trying to remember the timeline, but it's been at least 15, 16 years. My husband came to me and confessed that he had a pornography addiction, which had resulted or helped result in an affair. And it rocked my world, obviously, and his world, our family. Our kids were all really young, 3 kids under the age of 5.
Wow.
And it was like, well, what do we do? And so we worked through restoration and many years of healing and recovery for Aaron. And I was sort of pushed into, well, how can we help our kids?
Yeah.
And give them the tools that we didn't have.
Yeah.
Because we really had no tools for navigating this thing,
That's right.
either of us.
Yeah.
We grew up in a time where nobody talked about pornography. So I was like, okay, well, let's see what we can do different. And through educating myself and then starting to talk to my friends and then starting to talk to other people, I realized everyone was in the same boat. And eventually the book was born because I recognized parents were crying out for help just like we were.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember trying to think how to tell the story, not to throw anyone under the bus. I mean, we stumbled upon a friend's dad's Playboy magazine, and that was it. You know what I mean? Like the access these days is really frightening. And so I want to get to a place of like reality today to go, like, it's everywhere, and not to freak these parents out, but we can't have our head in the sand. And I often talked about extremes here, that like we could put our head in the sand and just be like, oh, I don't know what to do. And that's a really dangerous extreme. And then we can shift the other way where we're freaking out all the time and we don't let them ever have a phone or leave the house or that kind of thing. And so today you're going to talk about a realistic blend of those things of like, how can we protect our kids, but also be open to the fact that they're probably going to see something. And what do we do then? So let's start there. When and how do we start talking about this? This is the age-old question, but we're just not perfect, but give us a place to start.
The number one question I get, and everybody wants to know. Well, I want us to preface the answer by saying the average age of first-time exposure to pornography for kids right now is between the ages of 8 and 11. So if we know that's our framework, the ideal is to talk to our kids before they are ever exposed to explicit content, because we want to give them a plan for how to respond. My goal is always, let's be proactive rather than reactive. And that's not always the case, like that we can't always make that happen. But in an ideal world, we're going to be proactive rather than reactive. So ideally, we're going to talk to our kids before the age of 8, before their chances of being exposed to explicit content, skyrockets. And if it's okay, I'd love to give a sample of what that first conversation sounds like.
I was just about to say, I'm sure that's in the book, but tell us exactly what to say.
Yeah. So if you imagine your 8-year-old and you're talking to them and you're not sitting down to have a real formal conversation. This could be while you're, stirring up brownies in the kitchen or throwing a baseball in the backyard, going for a drive, having donuts, something just real casual. And you say, sweetheart, I need to tell you about something called pornography. And I need you to know what it is because it's harmful for you and for your body and your brain and your heart. And it's my job to keep you safe from things that are harmful to you. And so Pornography is pictures or movies of people who have no clothes on and are showing all their privates. And we know that privates are worthy of respect and protection. So we don't show other people ours, and we don't look at others in pictures or movies or, with each other. And if you ever see pictures or movies like that, here's what I want you to do. It could be on mom's phone while you're looking for something to draw a picture. I want you to just turn the phone over and come talk to me. Or maybe on a tablet while you're playing a game. I want you to turn the tablet over or turn it off and come talk to me or
It's good.
daddy. Or if someone shows you on their phone, it could be a friend, it could be somebody's big brother or sister, it could be a grown up. And if they show you on their phone or their computer, I want you to say in a really strong voice, I don't want to look at that. And then I want you to leave. Come find me or another safe grown up and say, I need help. And we will help you.
Love it. Love it.
That's the first conversation.
It's so good, and I think we get frozen on, like, we're gonna say it wrong or, it is awkward, but I think you're calm. You're not, like you said, making them, "We have to sit down and have this moment." And I think my kids, I remember one time Ella said, "Mom, can you tell me all the cuss words?" And I was like, "What?" It's like, they wanna know about things before they're shocked with it. Like, they wanna be prepared. They don't know how to say that, and so before your book, we had good pictures, bad pictures. It was like a little, quick book to, give me the language really to say. And then there was another one that I cannot remember the name of, and I will find it, but it was more about good touch, bad touch. Like, this is kinda parameters and setting their minds up to, like, no one is supposed to touch your private parts. And have you seen that song on TikTok that's like, "These are my private parts, private parts"? Oh my word. This teacher in Africa says this whole is like, nobody can touch them, nobody can see them. And I was like, man, that would have been a great song to just laugh about, but also just be like, this is the deal. Like, it's funny, but it's true. Like, no one can touch your own private part. So I know some young mom is freaking out right now, but I think to me, there was three big conversations that I always had. For whatever reason, I have girls, but Ron was like, you've got these, but just like birds and the bees, safety for their own body, and then pornography. And I'm so glad I did. I, to this day, don't know. I'd be curious to ask my girls. They're like, no, we haven't seen anything, but I know they have. I know they have. They just haven't come forward and told me.
Yeah.
But one important thing you said is come to me. So how can we make sure
Mm.
we are a safe place and we're not making it, making them have to hide it or hold it because they're afraid of our reaction? How can our reaction be okay?
Well, one of the best ways, and there's no guarantee, but we do our best, right? And
Mhm.
one of the best ways is to create open communication with the kids. And that's why starting before they ever see anything, before they're filled with shame or embarrassment or fear or discomfort for what they've seen, you've set the stage, you've established yourself as the expert, as a safe place, and said, you can come to me. You won't be in trouble. I will be so glad that you came and told me this happened.
Yeah.
And then to keep bringing the topic up,
Yeah.
and not just the topic of pornography, like you're pounding it over their heads, but like a month later, you're like, hey, remember when we talked about that thing called pornography? And I remember with one of my sons having that conversation. Well, do you remember when we talked about that thing called porn? And he goes, corn? Like, no, not corn. And, like he needed to be reminded because he had already forgotten.
Yeah.
And taking it out of this box of like, this is the super scary box of super scary things we never talk about. And instead just making it like these are open conversations. You read a book about, staying safe, protection of their body. And part
Yeah.
of that is also protection of their eyes. And so
Right.
that's a good time to remind them like, oh, also we need to protect our eyes and what our eyes are seeing and protect our brain. And so just casually talking about the ways that they can honor and respect their own body and other people's bodies, and not looking at pornography is one of the ways to do that, just like they keep their body safe from inappropriate touch. Not being afraid to have these conversations with our kids every few months, reminding them of the truth that they're created in God's image and worthy of respect and protection,
Love it.
saying, don't have to be afraid to talk to me, and then modeling it for them.
Yeah, that's right. And I remember I heard you on Monica Swanson's podcast and you were talking about like just even rehearsing your response of being like, just like poker face. It's like even if internal you're like, oh my gosh, like what have we done? What have we done as a mom? How do we, it's just like staying calm because they certainly won't keep coming back when we're freaking out. So how do we talk to them about curiosity? Because I think a majority of this, I would imagine you may have a statistic, is that it's found accidentally. So they stumble upon it, a friend sends them something at school. But what do you do with the boy or girl that's like, I'm just actually curious, like, what is that word? Or if
Mhm.
people are saying this, that they did this with a boyfriend, they go looking for something that they're just curious. So, how can we help them with that? Because it's like, I'm not going to go to my mom and say, what does this mean? First base, second base, or whatever the kind of things there, even though like a term about a private part or something.
Yeah. Well, again, I always feel that the best thing is to establish yourself as an expert, especially for those young kids.
Yeah.
And to really say, like, if you have a question, if you're curious, like, call it out, like, put it out there. Like, you may be curious about the things I've just told you. You may be curious if you hear kids talking at school or somebody shows you something at baseball practice. If that's the case, tell me and I'll help you figure out the answer if it's
Yeah.
something that is safe for you to know right now. But if you, like, acknowledge the fact that they could be curious, that's a big
Hmm.
help because then that takes away some of the mystique, and you're
Right.
like, "Hey, you can come ask me," and I've told my kids over and over from the time they're little, "You can ask me anything." Do they always? Less when they were younger and in their early teen years, but now in the later teen and young adult years, I mean, we can talk about just about anything, and they're not afraid to ask me, and sometimes I'm like, "Whoa." I cannot believe we're having this conversation right now.
Face turns red. It's all fine.
But but I'm really glad because, like, when your daughter said, "Tell me all the cuss words," like, to not freak out and be like, "Oh my gosh, you can't know that stuff right now," to
Yeah.
just be like, "Well, why do you wanna know? And have you
Yeah.
heard some? And let's talk about it." Yeah, I will tell you these are things you shouldn't say, but it's okay for me to tell you what they are so you know that those aren't good words for you to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
at school or whatever. I think
Exactly.
just, yeah, establishing that you are the one that they can come to for everything and reminding them of that over and over again. That goes a long way, and it takes years to cultivate that, but it's worth the effort.
Do you think, and I think I know your answer, but let me set you up. I think in our minds, we're like, okay, if I have a daughter, the mom talks to the daughter, the boy talks to the son. And that's not the case. Like some people in relationships are more comfortable talking about this. So is that your experience that you talk to both your sons and your daughter, or is it depends on the marriage or the personalities?
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance there, but I think that it's absolutely vital, if possible, for moms and dads to talk to sons and daughters about pornography
Mm,
because we have this kind of old fashioned idea that in the past, pornography was a man's issue only.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the men talked to the sons, and then that was it. And it's like, number one, that's not the truth. Pornography impacts men and women, it's a
Hmm.
human issue. So therefore, we all need to address it. Also, there could be a family for a variety of reasons where there is no dad to talk to the kids.
Mm,
And so, does that mean the mom can't talk to the sons? Absolutely
love
not.
it.
Also, I want my sons to know pornography impacts women negatively.
Wow.
They need to hear from the voice of a woman that it hurts women. And I want
Mm,
them to hear that from me. I want my
yeah.
daughter to know from me and her dad that pornography hurts women and that he's not okay with it and I'm not okay with it. I just,
That's great.
if possible, we should all be talking about it. And if not, do the best you can with what you have.
Yeah, I love it. So let's talk before we move to teen years, because I think it's a little bit different in how you handle. Let's stay in the little kiddo years. How can we practically, and there's a lot of resources out there, but can you give us some ways practically that we can help our kids out? To say like, hey, there's no 100% foolproof
Mm.
way. And I think you mentioned again in another podcast that an email could be sent, and you can't help that. But like, what are some ways that we could get on it today and start helping to protect our kids and keep them from this?
Well, in your home, that's obviously one of the easiest places to protect your kids. And you can install a router, which helps lessen the explicit content coming into your home, the devices in your home. And they're one of my dear friends, Chris McKenna, runs an organization called Protect Young Eyes.
Hmm.
And he has like a whole blog post about how to install a router in your home. And that's a great level of protection in your home.
Okay, great.
And then just establishing, like, safe tech rules, like, if you don't just get on the computer or the iPad and Google anything. Like, if you're, 7, 8, 9 years old, you say, "Hey, mom, I wanna look this up," and let mom or dad know that you're looking for something so that we can sit next to you and help you do a safe search, and then begin to teach them what that looks like, so by the time they're in middle school or high school, they can do it more safely on their own, but you don't just hand them the keys and say drive
Right.
when, they're 8. you sit next to them and
Yeah.
help them learn how to do this safely. Not playing video games with strangers. That's something a
Yes.
lot of parents don't know. And I would say, like, let's establish that from, little kid all the way through high school. But
Absolutely.
being on a video game console, and it doesn't have to be connected to the internet. It could be connected to your TV. But any video game console that is allowing strangers to play games with your kids, you are allowing a potential predator to
Yep.
have access to your child. And they have headphones on. You don't even know what they're talking about. You
Yeah.
have no idea that that person they're playing with, if they're 12 or they're 35.
Yeah.
So those are things that you can do in your own home to protect your kids and establish those kind of just using tech in a safe way when they're young, establishing again yourself as the expert, saying, I'm here to keep you safe. Here are different ways we do that. Just making tech something that is not individual, but we're doing this as a family.
Family. Yeah. 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 I have given this business idea to several people, and I'm going to now give it to you, Greta, and I need you to implement it. But we need a Geek
Okay.
Squad, a team of vans that shows up at your house. And we're like, we are the tech support, because I would get like one block of like a password. I'm like, ah, crap. I don't know my iCloud thing. And then I would just forget about it. And so, like, part of me was like, I wish there was a person that would show up and I would bring out every device, everything we have, and we would go through all the things, because I don't even think we realize how awful the parenting controls are. It's like the factory set is terrible. So, like,
Yeah.
getting in there with a friend. And so, my suggestion to you, if Greta doesn't start the Geek Squad for porn, is to invite some friends over and say, we are doing this tonight. Everyone bring your devices, or I'll come to your house, you come to mine, and we open it up and say, oh my gosh, click that. And oh my gosh, go into Roblox and say, we only message friends, or whatever the things are, because the more barriers they have, the better, the safer it is for them. And so, any other thoughts on the parental controls? I think a lot of
Mm.
people don't know that they're set to be wide open from the start
Oh
on
my
every
gosh.
device.
I had no idea. When my oldest he bought himself an iPad when I think he was 17. And, he's an artist, and he's
Mm.
like, "I need to use this for art." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're 17. It's time. We
Yeah.
can say yes to this." But I was shocked that the factory settings of his iPad, and it would be the same with any other device from Apple and probably from Android as well or whatever, was set to explicit. It was set to explicit. That's how it
Wow.
came. And so I had to figure out how to go in there and change so that I could say, no, G. We're rating this G,
Yes,
no
right.
explicit. But it is tricky. And I would say that's why my book is not titled, Here's How to Change the Settings on All Your Devices to Make It
Yeah.
Safe. My book is titled, It's Time to Talk to Your Kids About Porn, because the reality is, like you said, there's so much.
Yeah.
There's things that slip through the cracks. I can't tell you how many times parents say, I did everything right, but my kid found an old phone hidden away in a drawer. We didn't even know it was connected anymore. We didn't even know it was active, but they figured out how to use it.
Yeah.
Or someone shows your kid something, and that
That's right.
means we have to talk about it because things will slip through the cracks. We cannot control everything.
That's right.
We have to talk about it so that if they are exposed, when they are exposed, the prayer is that they'll come to us and say, this is what happened. And we can say, I'm so sorry. You must be hurting. You must be scared. This is uncomfortable. This is painful. Let us help you. Because when the safety procedures we put in place, the safety settings fail for whatever reason, our kids need to be able to talk to us and we need to be able to talk to them.
I love it. Will you repeat that statement? So, if you have a young kid come show you something, or they say, I keep seeing this or something, what is that baseline conversation? I love that you said, let us help you. Is that
Mm.
the first line of
Yeah,
defense?
I'm so glad you came and told us what happened. Thank you. You must be confused or scared or sad or hurting.
Mm-hmm.
We want to help you. If that can be your response, one of compassion and grace, not anger, not judgment, not fear, but a calm, steady presence that says, "Let me help you," that can change everything.
Love
And
it.
as someone who has failed in that area, I can say it's also never too late to repair
Yes.
if you have failed. If you've responded in the wrong way, it's never too late to go back to your kid and say, "Hey, I'm sorry. I messed up. on that response. Can I help you now? I
Yeah.
shouldn't have responded that way. Will you forgive me? And can I help you now? It's never too late to make a repair. That is establishing again yourself as a person who will respond with compassion and with help. Man,
Mhm.
that is a big deal for a child in this scenario.
I love it. All right, let's move on to teens. So you can have some different conversations with teens that you can't have with the 5-year-old, and meaning like really talk about the reality of what this does and really talk about the illegal nature of sending pornographic photos. If someone asks you for one or you send one, like there is ramifications, like that is not a legal thing to do. So did you, again, you had many conversations, but one of the ones that I had with my girls, I had a pastor friend in Atlanta, and he was a pastor for young married couples. And he said, I cannot believe the number of young married couples that are struggling in their sex life because they've seen so much porn. They can't even get excited to be with their brand new wife, and they're 20 years old and their bodies are perfect. And I'm like, wait till you're 50. It's like, what in the world? You're 20, you've got everything going for you, and it's all working right, and you're already struggling. And so I talked to my girls about that and said, like, that is a reason to not do it because of your future relationship of with your spouse. And so what are those kind of conversations that we can have with our teens just to be real with them about, and firsthand the effects that it had on your marriage.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say kudos to you for having that conversation because I do not think that's a common
Mhm.
conversation that a lot of parents have. I mean, usually the conversation with teens is, don't do it. It's not good for you. It's bad. And yeah, maybe we say don't send sex, no sexting, don't send nudes. That could be, you could get in trouble. But to actually talk about like how porn impacts their future relationships and their marriage, like that's a big deal. And I think that that is crucial because it's going into the why. And our teens need to know why because they're growing up in a culture that says, porn is fine. Porn is
Yeah,
normal.
it's no big
Porn
deal.
is funny. Porn, everyone uses it. So we have to be the ones that are not just saying don't use it, it's bad, but they need to know why. And I will say I gave a talk to about, I don't know, a few hundred teenagers and they were not raised in the church. So they
Mhm.
didn't have like that messaging coming to them. And when I talked to them about the dangers of pornography and the ways that it could impact them and others, their response was, we didn't even know porn was bad for us. We didn't even
Wow.
know we didn't have to use it because everyone uses it. And so, as parents, we need to know that's the messaging our teens are getting. We need to tell them the truth. Like, pornography hurts them and hurts others. It's connected to things like sex trafficking, it's
Yeah,
connected to things like child pornography. It could impact their marriage, like their bodies. Like, if you train your brain to only be stimulated by pornography, then when you're with your real life partner, your husband or your wife, you can't actually intimate relationship unless your body is stimulated
that's
by
right.
porn,
That's
your
right.
brain and your body. Like if they don't know those truths, then we are failing them because we're not telling them the facts about what pornography does
Yeah.
and how it impacts people. And it's our job as parents to do that.
I love it. Layer on that biblical framework. How do you phrase that in a way? I know this may not even be accurate, but I remember saying with my kids one time, like, is that pleasing to God? And I don't know that it goes back to like the birds and the bees. It's like God's design is dot, dot, dot. So, what is some of the language or verses that you use with your kids to kind of set up just because they are believers that this is going to have a different framework or filter for them?
Well, yeah, you use the term God's design. And if we really believe that God's design and God's plan is best, that sex is supposed to be between a man and a woman, and it's supposed to be in the context of marriage, that when you take that out and you remove one of the people and you're just engaging in sexual behavior with a screen and an image on a screen, that changes everything
Yeah.
actually does hijack God's design and it impacts the brain. And so that the brain cannot function and then the body can't function the way God designed it.
Hmm.
And it makes sex into a selfish thing. And it's all about yourself. And it's actually hurting other people because that person on the screen is a real person and you're engaging in hurting them, even though you don't realize that.
Yeah.
And so when we take it in the context of this is God's plan, his best plan to give us the best thing, that helps it become more than just porn is bad.
That's right.
It's not the best and God's plan is best. And let me tell you why his plan is best and why porn wrecks that.
I
I
love it.
think that's helpful because less about this, hammer coming down. Don't do this even though
Mhm.
everybody else is. And it's like, let me tell you why it could be so much better than what the world is
I
offering.
love that.
Satan wants to wreck it.
Yeah, I love it. One more question about teens. What are some other things we don't think about that we may need, like, for instance, books? You brought up books before with girls. So, talk to us about some of those other
Mm.
things we need to be thinking about and educating them, even on Pinterest. Like, there's things
Oh,
that you're like,
Pinterest
oh,
is
Pinterest is like, oh, I'm getting a cupcake recipe, and that is not a cupcake recipe that I just
Yeah,
clicked
Pinterest
on.
is actually full of porn. So I know, and myself included, I'm a I walk a pretty hard line about giving kids social media. I think social media should be delayed as long as possible.
Mhm.
But for many of us, like, we don't realize, like, Pinterest is a kind of social media. And once you start looking at one thing, the algorithm's like, oh, let me feed this stuff to you, and it can be explicit content. So,
Yeah.
yes, be careful of any kind of social media that your kid is on, even if you think it isn't social media. But two other really important ones I would mention is one for girls. For many girls, the most common way they're introduced to pornography is through books and erotic literature, which is really pornography on a page, is absolutely rampant in young adult literature
Mhm.
for girls. And that is not an accident. It is by design. The pornography industry was like, wait, we're missing out on this huge audience, this huge money making opportunity. We need to create porn for girls. And so it starts with a book. They're reading these books they're highly, highly sexual, very graphic. And then that proceeds to other things
Yeah.
because you're building an appetite. So you need to be
Yep.
aware of what your daughters specifically are reading, and in books and also online, because there
Mhm.
are so many things online that are like, you're reading this story and whoa, wow, this is so much more than they bargained for. But if we haven't prepared them for that, then how are they going to respond? They're curious. They're going to keep reading.
Yep. Yep.
So be aware of what your girls are reading. And then for boys, one of the number one problems that's happening right now is sextortion, because you've
Mhm.
got these 14-year-old boys who their prefrontal cortex is not developed, and they're talking to some girl on TikTok or Snapchat or whatever other, there are many social
Yeah.
media
Yeah.
accounts out there. They're talking to this who they think is a cute 15-year-old girl who's complimenting them and says, send me a picture. And they're like, okay, because I'm dumb and I'm 14 and she sounds pretty. And they do it. And then that person reveals themselves to be an adult in some other country and says, if you don't send me $500 right now, I will share this picture with everyone and everyone will know what
Wow.
you've done.
What?
And then that boy is terrified and doesn't know what to do because he doesn't have $500, but he doesn't want to tell his parents because
Mm.
they're going to find out what he did. And he's just absolutely just stuck. And he feels like, I don't know how to handle this situation. And right now, the FBI says that this issue of sextortion amongst young teenage boys is one of the number one, if not the number one, greatest danger that that age group is facing,
Wow.
that demographic. And so we have to talk to our sons and our
Yeah.
daughters and say, if anyone asks you for a picture, don't do it. And if you do, come tell me right away. I want to help you.
Yeah.
I love you. I want to keep you safe. We have to tell the police. They need to have a plan for
Yeah.
how to
That's right.
respond.
That's right.
So those are two big issues facing teen girls and boys right now.
Ugh, it makes me so mad because I'm like, it's not like they're even looking for it. It's just like they are the target and they're getting savvier and savvier with it. And it's really, really frustrating. Okay, give us some hope. So hope from your story, hope from people that have read your book to say, like, okay, my husband went through this, I went through this, I am struggling, my child has told me they're struggling. Is there redemption or hope on the other side of a struggle like this?
Yes. One of my favorite quotes is from a lady named Betsy ten Boom. She was arrested and put in a Nazi concentration camp for hiding Jews in World War
Mm.
II. She was a Christian. Her whole family was arrested. And while in that concentration camp, one of the things she said is, there's no pit so deep that God's love is not deeper still.
Mm.
And I say, yes, even the pit of pornography. There is no pit so deep that God's love is not deeper still. So if pornography has been a problem in your own life, if you've been hurt by it, if you're using it right now and you're
Mm.
struggling, or if your child has used pornography, has been exposed, porn does not have to be the end of anyone's story. We don't have to live in fear of it happening to our kid and we're terrified and we like, hide them in, the closet because we're like, we can't let you out in the real
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
But also, we don't have to say, well, they've been exposed or I was exposed or I've used it. So the story's over. And one of the most amazing parts about this to show that this is true, porn doesn't have to be the end of anyone's story, is that the brain is something called neuroplastic, which
Mhm.
means it can change and heal. God designed our brains to heal. So if there have been new pathways created by using pornography over and over again, that when that stops and new habits are created, and the person who's used porn or seen porn creates new habits to stop using the pornography, the brain begins to heal and those pathways close up, new pathways are formed. Romans, I'm going to say the verse wrong, so we're going to have to go back to the show notes and add it, but it's in the book of Romans and it
Okay.
says we need to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. And of course,
Yep,
that's spiritual, but it's also a physical thing that brain science is showing that brains can
yep.
be healed. And so there are so many people out there working now to help people who've been exposed or are using pornography and want to stop. And I know from my husband's story, and then he works with men every single week who are changing their lives, getting off of pornography. I know from people I've interviewed on my podcast, like it is not the end of anyone's story. None of us have to say, I'm held captive by this for the
Mm,
rest of my life. That
so
doesn't have
good.
to be the truth. There is healing and there is hope. Absolutely.
I love it. For the person that's like, "Hey, you just got to the part that I really wanna talk about," is there a resource on is it the book? Is it a resource on your podcast? Have you helped walk people through, like, "I just found this out. What steps can I take towards healing?"
Yeah, absolutely. So my book does have a whole chapter on what to do after your kid is, you find out your kid was exposed to porn or is using porn. I have a whole index in the back with information about websites and organizations that help people. And then
Okay.
also on my podcast, I've interviewed countless people who were engaged in pornography, men, women, couples, and they share their story and they
That's
share
great.
about how they came out of that. So I am all about not just prevention, but also saying there's hope on the other side
Love it.
because we need to hear both sides. We need to hear like, how do we try to avoid this? And if something happened and we didn't, we need hope to hear how people came out of that life.
Yeah. Hey, big thanks to you, and I would say thanks to your husband for being willing to just be honest about this, and I know you've helped thousands and thousands of people, so really, really appreciate you. Where can people find you?
Well, the place I'm most active is Instagram. So if you just look up Greta Eskridge on Instagram and I'll come right up. And then you can also check out my website, gretaeskridge.com. And then the book is It's Time to Talk to Your Kids About Porn. And it's wherever you buy books or even your library. If it doesn't carry it, ask them to.
I love it. That's a great idea. Hey, thank you so much. You're such a delight, and this is gonna be so helpful. Thanks.
Thanks for having me and being willing to have the conversation.
Of course, of course.
Christian parenting.